Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Brandon again. In this video, we're going to be talking about what decision I made when it comes to the racks. This is the 5th video in a 6-part video series, I believe. So if you haven't seen the other videos, go do that. I made a playlist just to quickly recap what those videos entail. First of which is going over what I'm looking for in my search. The next one looks at the Rep Fitness HR 5000. And then the next video looks at the Sorinex XL half rack. And then the other video that I just did was the Rogue Monster half rack. So now we're going to talk about which one I picked out of those. And then the last video in the series will actually show you the rack that I got as it's here, it's set up. I love it a lot. But let's talk about how I got there. So for this video, I'm going to just talk about what are the things I was looking for. And I'm basically going to assign a value of either a pro, a con, or a push. So a pro is something that I view as being the best out of the categories I'm looking at. A con is the lower end of the categories I'm looking at. And a push means maybe right in the middle, so it's tough to tell between the three. So hopefully that makes sense, and I'm gonna try to put some kind of graphic on the screen too, so you guys can kind of follow along, and I'm gonna walk you through my thought process, but again, for more context, go look at those other videos because each one's like 12 to 15 minutes, and it gives you an idea of exactly what I was thinking. So now it's just time to directly compare them. So the first thing I'm gonna talk about is footprint. So as you guys remember, it's going in the garage now, and even though there's a higher ceiling footprint, I don't have as much space for a base or depth, and the footprint up top is also somewhat limited based off of depth depending on where I can place the rack. And this rack will also eventually be going in a basement, which is probably going to have anywhere from a 90 to 96 inch ceiling. So that's just something to take into consideration. So for footprint, the Rep Fitness here is the con in my opinion, because it has the highest overall height of all the racks I'm looking at. It's 98 inches when the pull-up bar is turned up. You can flip that pull-up bar upside down, which would make it 93 inches. But with that, you are actually losing some height on the pull-ups because it's not as high as if it had just a straight bar. So that, in my opinion, is a con because you have to seriously change the equipment, and doing so actually negatively impacts what you're able to do. And it would put that pull-up bar probably at right around 88 inches of height, which would be the lowest of all the racks I'm looking at. And for that reason, the footprint for the Rep gets the L here. I will also say the depth here up top could be something that could potentially cause a problem, because not only do you have to deal with the depth of the rack being roughly 24 inches or so, 30 inches if you count the tubing, but also the fact that it has upper band pegs also adds in more height requirement in terms of depth, which I don't think I have in the garage, or if I did, it would be a very tight fit. So again, the Rep Fitness loses out here. Moving on to the Sorinex, this is a push in my opinion, because it's kind of right in the middle if you take a look at the base heights of all these racks, and it's right at 95.5 inches, I believe, which would fit in the garage. I'm not really 100% sure it would fit in the basement though. So that is still kind of tall, and it's taller than the Rep Fitness model. Again, if you were to turn that actual pull-up handle down, but 95 inches for me is kind of tough. It's right in between of the no-fly zone, if you will. Which brings us to the Rogue Fitness, which at first look, being 100 inches up front, might sound like it's completely out of the running because of that. But as I mentioned in my Rogue video, they were actually willing to switch out those front uprights for 90-inch uprights, making both the front and the rear 90 inches, which would actually be the most appealing here out of all the options. And you'd have the pull-up bar at the right height as well. So the Rogue here actually takes the win, which it might not have if you considered going with the initial 100-inch version model. So next, moving on to availability. So how soon I can get this rack, which is important to me because I sold my other rack. I've been without one. I have joined a commercial gym, but as part of that, it's just tough for me to go to that. I think in the month since I joined that commercial gym, I was able to go maybe 3 times, 4 times. So it's been more difficult. So I really want to get something in my home so I can get after it. So the availability, Rep takes the win here because it's available in stock as of today and can probably ship and get to me within a week, which is very appealing. The Sorinex takes the loss in this column because if you remember, their lead time is made to order, and they told me initially 6 to 8 weeks. They did offer to upgrade me on the uprights that would expedite the shipping some, but it would still be around 6 weeks for shipping, and that was the longest of all the 3 racks I was looking for. The Rogue option here is a push because it's 1 to 2 weeks, so it's not the fastest, but it's definitely not the slowest either, just trailing behind the Rep slightly, so I still consider this a push. The all-in price here, I want to talk about those next. First, we'll talk with the Rep. The Rep takes the win here again. All-in price is just under $1,400. For the Sorinex version, the base price is very appealing, being just at about $1,200, but when you factor in taxes, when you factor in shipping costs, which was $550, it kind of puts it out of the ballpark and is by far and away the most expensive of the racks that I was looking at. So it gets the loss or the con column here. For Rogue, it's actually a push for me again, because again, the base price here is attractive. The shipping price isn't bad, but where the price starts to creep up is the fact that it does not come standard with safety arms like all the other racks do. You have to add those on. If you want to do that, it's $270 extra, which puts the total cost in at around $1,700. So again, right in the middle of the Sorinex being $1,900 and the Rep being $1,400. So another push for the Rogue. Moving on next to the quality of the product and also the resale value. I've decided to combine these categories because the higher quality you have and the better name recognition you have, typically the more resale value you can get out of that. Because of that, the Rep Fitness here is in the losers column, or in a negative column for me, only because it's one of those brands that's typically looked at as a budget brand, and they have a lot of great things at a lot of great prices. But this rack I was looking at is probably one of their most, if not the most expensive rack that they sell. And spending that much on something where I know I'm not going to be able to get as much money on return because a lot of people aren't as familiar with Rep is a negative for me. Moving on next to the Sorinex, this actually gets a push from me only because I know the resale value is high. I know the quality is high, but because you're eating $550 in shipping, I'm paying another $120 in tax. That's almost $700 worth of value that I cannot get my money back on. So in this case, even though I can probably get a lot of my base price back, I'll never get that $700 back, and that just really offsets things for me, which is why Sorinex in this regard is a push. High quality, resale value's up there, but the all-in cost is so high that it offsets that. For me, for Rogue, however, this is where Rogue wins out, because not only is the pricing, again, right in the middle, as we talked about before, but the resale and quality is very high, and a lot of consumers, even if they're not super into training, are familiar with Rogue because of their presence in the CrossFit community and all the strength stuff that they do. And again, having a lot of experience selling equipment, Rogue stuff typically gets a lot of your investment back, which again, for me as a pro, especially if I'm not going to be keeping this rack forever. Moving on next to the standard accessories, so the stuff that you get with the rack itself, the Rep Fitness one wins here because you're getting the upgraded sandwich J cups that I talked about in the video. You're getting some very nice spotter arms, which are UHMW lined both on the actual catches themselves and where the rack attaches and the accessory attaches, I should say. Not to mention you get band pegs up top and down below. You get a lot of bang for your buck, and it wins out when it comes to standard accessories. The Sorinex for me is a push, only because you do get your standard J cups and you get some very standard looking spotter arms, but they're not anything special. They're not as nice as the Rep Fitness ones, or at least based off of appearance or function, but they are better than the Rogue ones. So the Rogue here actually takes the loss, because when you take a look at the Rogue model, as I mentioned, you do get your standard J cups, but that's about it. You have to pay additional for spotter arms, which is a necessity when using a half rack. So the standard accessories for Rogue takes the loss, or is the con column here. Lastly, I want to talk about the ecosystem. So when you buy the rack, what else are you buying into in terms of the company? There are other offerings. Can you get more accessories from that rack? Can you buy other things from that company? So for me, the Rep Fitness one actually is in the con, or the negative column here, because they don't have any accessories yet for this 1-inch hardware that they're rolling out with their newer racks. You can just get the dip station, which is okay, but you don't really have the option to go directly through Rep for other things when it comes to the accessories. True, with the 3x3 1-inch hardware, you should be able to adapt stuff, but again, this is just something I'm looking at in terms of an overall investment, even though I said I'm probably going to sell this within a year and a half or so. Now, Rep does have some barbells, which have gotten some very good reviews. Personally speaking, I would like to see them come out with more aggressively knurled barbells. Just for how I like to train, I like to see more aggressive knurl on it, but they do have some very attractive ones based off price points and features. Just the knurl needs to be stepped up a little bit. They do also offer other things like plates, which are okay, but they're not on the same level as, let's say, Rogue offers. So the Rep Fitness here for the ecosystem overall is a negative for me. For Sorinex, it's a push, because they have a lot of great offerings in terms of accessories for the racks and other products that they sell, but it's a push because, again, when you talk about the pricing and the availability and the shipping, it brings all that down. So everything that they do good on their end, it's tough because it's expensive and takes a long time to get into your actual hands. Which leaves us with Rogue, who wins in this category, because not only do they offer great racks, they have some of the best barbells for the price, and they also have some of the best plates for the price out there. They do a whole bunch of other stuff in terms of what they offer on their site. So it's by far a Rogue win here in this column. So that gives me all the things I was kind of really looking at and taking a deeper look. Some of the things that are most concerning to me are availability and overall price. And because the Sorinex does not meet those two things that well, the Sorinex was the first rack I eliminated from contention. To be honest, I really wanted to get a Sorinex in a sense, because as I mentioned in that video, it's something I've been chasing for a while. And if they could have got their shipping down to, let's say, like $250 or $300 and got it to me within a month, maybe a little more, I probably would have pulled the trigger on the Sorinex. But being the case that they couldn't do that, I had to again eliminate it from my search. So that left me with the Rep Fitness option and the Rogue option. And to be honest, taking a look at my chart that I just ran through, there's a lot of similarities in terms of pros that each company has. However, when I take a deeper look at it, the Rogue has less negatives than the Rep Fitness one had personally. Now, there is a price difference, which is about $200 to $300 in favor of the Rep. But at the end of the day, $300 on this kind of order isn't that great to me. And the fact that this is potentially the tallest rack at 98 inches, or having the downside of having to flip the pull-up bar down, which I didn't want to do because I dealt with a shorter rack before. And as part of this build being in the garage, I wanted to be able to have a taller pull-up rack. And I also might potentially have to take off those top band pegs due to the height space that it takes up in terms of depth and hitting something in the ceiling. I had to eliminate the Rep, but it was very hard. And to be honest, going into this, the Rep Fitness was what I was really leaning towards, as I thought this was going to be my rack. But at the end of the day, I had a real struggle bus problem of taking a look at this and saying, this is a expensive purchase from this brand of company that aren't as proven yet, in my opinion. Again, you get a lot for your money, but it's just not there. I really kind of put into the thought process an analogy of it's like sinking 50 grand and buying a Hyundai. Yeah, you get a lot for that money in the car if you buy one of their Genesis or Equus models or Azeras or whatever they're called. So they have some higher end models, but at the end of the day, it's still a Hyundai. And again, you get a lot of bang for your buck, but it's just that perception that I just couldn't get over the hump. And that's why I decided to go with the Rogue. It had the least amount of negatives. It also just tied for the most amount of positives. And I've had that experience before. And it also offers me some other things that I can't do with other companies, meaning that I also need to buy weight plates as well. And being able to combine both a rack and weights and save on shipping was a huge deal for me. Now, I haven't talked too much about weights here. I don't know if I should make a video talking about it. You'll probably end up seeing them before I do that, but I might do the same thing with my thought process on the weights that I actually ended up going on. And I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but basically I was able to add like 800 and 900 pounds worth of weight to my order, and my shipping was still like $200 to $250 overall. So that was kind of what set me over the edge. I decided to go with the Rogue. But the problem is this all happened over a weekend, and I got to thinking. I started to get to thinking, if this is a rack that I'm going to go with for probably a year and a half, maybe even longer, who knows, maybe I just will really like it and it'll be really effective. Do I want to get a half rack? Because I've really come to like squatting and training inside of a rack. Not only is it safer, but it allows me to do some things that you couldn't do in a half rack potentially. And I just know that it's something that I wanted to invest or look into. And that being said, even though you can train within the half racks here, they're all 24-inch depth. Personally speaking, I found 30-inch depth to be more preferable. So I started to take a look and started to hem and haw on this Rogue purchase because, again, I really liked the offerings that it had. Out of the 3 racks I was looking at, it looked to me to be the best. But as I started pricing out some things, I started thinking that, hey, I'm shrinking down the front post as is, so it's going to be 90 in the front, 90 in the back. It's going to be 24 inches. It's going to be the Rogue Monster series. It's going to have 1-inch hardware. It started to sound really similar to a Rogue RM3. In fact, I've kind of, in the comment section, if you've been paying attention to my feedback with you guys, I've dubbed it the Rogue RM 2.5 because it's basically an RM3, but it's 24-inch depth instead. The main difference is it has the actual feet from the half rack in the front to kind of help support it. But otherwise, it was just basically a Rogue Monster rack. And what I thought was, when I started looking and pricing out this Rogue Monster rack as an RM3, I noticed that the price was actually substantially less than what I was looking for at the half rack, and it came standard with pin safeties as part of the price. And I may or may not have bought a Rogue RM3 with a few different modifications. So that's going to wrap up this video. I hate to break it to you, but I actually didn't end up going with any of those 3 racks that I was choosing, but it was a very organic process in how it happened. I wasn't thinking I'd go with an actual rack, which I ended up doing. And in the next and last video of this series, I'll show you exactly what I got, and again, talk to you about some of the changes I made and some of the addendums to why I did it. and I'll show you my rack, which I'm sure is something that you couldn't wait for an old man sitting in a basement to be able to finally tell you. So in the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.